Firstly, welcome everyone to the first panel discussion of today's event. The topic for today's session is going to be around building better workplace cultures. We're going to cover various topics from around the construction sector, and we've got a really exciting panel for you today. I'd like to ask questions at the end of the session, and I'm going to introduce the panel up on the stage. So if we can welcome Paula Evans, Senior Associate from Godwin Austin Johnson. Celeste Tai, MQS from Omnium International. Joe Tabber, Managing Director and Partner from JT and Partners. Nesreen Osman, Partner with Pinsent and Masons. Irina Valencia, Senior Architect from Edge Design. And Yasmina Nashawate, Dispute Resolution Services Manager from RICS. So we're going to open up with some questions around leadership, just around what your organisation is doing, maybe not doing, best practice from the organisation or from the industry. I'd like to open up a question to Joe around how his leadership within his organisation is balanced, or how he is trying to get the right balance. So we'll let Joe give us an insight into JT and Partners.
That's the advantage of being... It's not working? It's not my mistake. now it's working. All right? So that's the advantage of being the only male around this panel.
You can use it.
Yeah, never mind. So first, I have a small thing to say that on behalf of my fellow males, I would like to apologize that 95% of the audience is female. So this is something, I believe that this is where we have to start if we're going to talk about the subject. I wanted to have more males around the table so they will show commitment than showing what I can see in front of me, and I'm surrounded by very strong leaders and clever leaders. To go back to your question, Fiona, in our business as JT and Partners, we have a balance of 50% between male and female. Our leaders at the management level, they are at 50%. And from my personal experience, and I'm not trying to be left or right towards male or female, but having this experience being here for 18 years, me personally, I felt more comfortable dealing with women at the management level because they showed more focus and more commitment for many reasons. And thanks God there's not enough male around the room, so I will be in a bad situation. So that's how we're doing it, and we are pushing our employees, it's either male and female, that they need to step up. You need to fight for your rights or for your roles and how you'd like to grow in your business. It's not enough to be in a business and say that I didn't get the opportunity. You really need to create the opportunity. It's either you are a male or a female. And this is something very important. That's where the personality and the character issue will come. And honestly, I will tell Jason, he's just in front of me now, that for the next session or the next summit, it's better to change the name from Women in Construction Summit to something else, because we are still making a focus on a women subject, which in my opinion has to change. Because the concern, if you keep focusing like that, my concern is in the next 5 years, we're gonna see a summit called Men in Construction Summit. And this is the main issue. So we need to break it. We need to talk about all of us being as capable people, personalities, characters, our education. This is what has to tell about us. It's not the way I am dressed. It's not about, I'm not gonna go that route, but this is it. It's all of us, we're one, and our potentials has to talk about us, our credential has to talk about us, and this is what's key.
Just looking at what Joe said and just looking at the balance, on his board, at board level, he said there's a 50-50 split. He's really embracing, the female leaders within his organisation. Yasmina, in looking at RICS, where you've got quite a lot of females in the organisation, how does that sit? How do you progress females within your organisation? What support are you giving females, whether it's initiatives around mentoring? Can you tell us a little bit about RICS and what they're doing?
Sure. So for those of you who aren't familiar, RICS is a standards body. We promote and enforce standards across the built environment sector. Many of the people in this room may be members of RICS. I know Celeste is a member of RICS. And we have internal diversity and inclusion initiatives and external for the wider industry. So from an internal perspective, Laura touched on the UK legislative requirement to do gender pay reporting, and our report for RICS came out last month. We are at a 22% pay gap. That is primarily due to the fact that at the senior leadership level, we don't have enough females. It is something that RICS is actively working to improve. We are introducing more mentorship programs that are more structured to retain and recruit females, as she mentioned, in a lateral perspective. And from a membership and from an external perspective, we have a campaign across the world basically called Women in Surveying that we're working with industry bodies. So many of the members in this room, HKA, ACOM, have signed up to our inclusive equality employment mark in the UK, which asks questions around how do we recruit, how do we retain females, because we know that females drop out of the industry, particularly in construction, due to some of the constraints with travel and timings. So we're working with various entities globally to promote and retain women in the industry.
Just following on from what Yasmin said about what RICS are doing, Nasreen, how does it feel for you being in a role which is very recent, becoming partner? What is the feeling like of being at that level and receiving that reward and recognition? How do you feel now?
Feels great. It feels really, really good actually, because I always think that leadership should reflect the people that are working for them. It makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever to have 10 men leading a team of 50 women. And that actually works across the board. It's a race issue as well, it's a religion issue. I just think leadership should always reflect those that are working for them. And in law specifically, and we were talking about this earlier, when people are going into university and into the early stages of their career, women outnumber men quite significantly. And then when you look at the end of that process and you look at the leadership, it's still a very male-dominated leadership. And it really does need to change, and it's actually starting, particularly in law. There's a real focus on it now. I specialize in construction law, and I always find that the lawyers in construction actually do reflect the industry, but there is definitely work going on there, and at Pinsent's, there's a real focus. We have internal initiatives, external initiatives. Our external initiatives are focused on allowing women to network at times that are suitable. It doesn't have to always be networking on the golf course just because it's construction. So external facing initiatives are looking at organizing events that everyone can attend. They're not straight after work where women might need to go and pick up kids from school. They're not on golf courses. They're accessible, and that's the thing. I think everything just has to be accessible to everyone. I agree, I don't think we always need to always have women-only things, but it's accessibility. How easy is it for women to get there? Internally, we have two specific initiatives. One's focused on leadership, increasing the number of female partners in the firm, and the other one is focused on females across the board at all levels. And both of those have been very, very successful in improving percentages of females in the business. In terms of leadership, our board is at about 45% female at the very top, which I think is very good for, from a law firm perspective. In terms of female partnership levels, I think we're currently about 26, 27, and we're aiming for 30% by 2020. So there's a lot of hard work being done to get there, but it takes time and it takes everybody put in the effort.
So just moving across to yourself, Paula, what can you tell us about Godwin Austin Johnson? You know, what are you doing or what you feel is happening within your own organisation at the minute? What about the policies? What are we doing with policies? Are we changing them? Have we got the best? Like, what's your view?
I think it's important to remember, you know, there's a lot of... Am I not working either? Am I on? There's a lot of standards out there for things. Good. There's a lot of standards out there for, you know, ISO accreditation, corporate social responsibility, but I think it's not just ticking those boxes. It's taking that to the next level and really giving not just an accessible, like you were saying, giving an inclusive environment. So, you know, whenever we have high-level meetings, we're always making sure, and I know it's probably not across the board. I'm very fortunate to work for a company that values my opinion and, you know, and values the opinions of its employees. So whenever we have high-level meetings, we make sure that we bring in the right people, no matter what level they are working at, to get their point of view, to make sure that they feel like they are heard and they you know, they get to contribute and have an opinion on the things that we're discussing.
I'm going to move across to Irina, and I want to know, Irina, how, you know, in terms of your organisation, are there any community groups, or like we mentioned the M Circle as an example? We heard that from the previous speaker, and I'm just, you know, wondering, is there anything you feel in your organisation that's doing that? You know, is there anything that's maybe forming within your organisation currently?
Is this working?
Yes.
Hi. My organization is not a big organization like we have here. We are around 50 people. But our percentage of female is 40%. So I think this is very good. And it's a very close environment. There is not this big hierarchy. So we are very open to always talk to each other, and the managers are always very accessible. So we do a lot of team building. It's a good environment. It's very friendly, it's very close, and I think that reflects in the design, in our designs. And
so you're not as much geographical spread. You're all in kind of one area.
Yes, we are. It's an open office, and is it a diverse kind of team build up? You can see the diversity in the office. Yes, in male and female, and also nationality, and it's very diverse.
And just you know, thinking about across all of the different sectors that we're working in, do you feel that there are some policies that other organisations have where you're thinking, actually, I really want that policy, and you're talking about them? You know, so-and-so's doing this, and they've got really good maternity policy. Why don't we talk about that within our own organisation? Has anybody kind of experienced that within their own organisation?
I've noticed things happening in the industry. For example, I was talking about this earlier. When we apply, I think the first step has to be at the... It's going to keep going off. Has to be at the application process. So when we submit our... It's going to keep going off. So when we submit our applications, our curriculum for an application for a potential position, I think things that some people are looking at is removing most of the personal information. Because what you'll find is, you know, when I look at CVs for applications, I skip straight past that. I go straight to the portfolio or straight to to the credentials of the experience of that person, because to me, that is not the most important factor. So when you think about when you receive a CV, first thing you see is the photo, which from the UK, there was never any photos on CVs. It was very strange. You're giving the employer an opportunity to make a preconceived opinion about you before you've even managed to get in front of them. So I think something that could definitely change, and I know that some people are looking at, is when people are applying, is to not ask for that information. So, I mean, you find that, so you have your photo, there's the first impression. Next thing is your age. Maybe not so much of an issue. But then you get to the next one, which is your marital status. Then they go back to the age, and they look at marital status, and then they look at the age and go, okay. So, really, the marital status shouldn't be titled marital status, it should be stated commitment, because that's ultimately what they want to know. They want to know, how much of your life can you give me? And I think that that's something that definitely needs to change. You take that information off the CV, and I think the whole ballgame changes, You might have a CV in front of you, you have a female, you see married, you see age, and yes, you make these assumptions. You see a male CV that says, oh, single, you think, oh, this is a real go-getter. He's committed to his work, he's going to give me what I need. So I think just simple, really, really simple things like that can from the outset, make quite a big difference. Yeah.
I believe that, you just mentioned about procedures. The more you have procedures, nothing will happen, unfortunately. I believe we both come from big organizations, and the discussion about women in construction started like 14 years ago, and we had a lot of events, and we used to go and sit in Jabal Ali with big boards of directors which will cost millions and billions, and then we'll have a drink and we come back and nothing will happen. So it's not about the procedures, it's about the will, and the will, it has to happen from everybody. It's from the recruitment. You mentioned about maternity. I want paternity. It's the same. So you mentioned that to spend time with the kids, pick up the kids from school. I want to pick up my kids from school. So this is the whole story. It's like there's gonna be, we need a will, not to put the procedure and follow A, B, C, D, and then we will have a woman working and then the balance. Because I believe that if you look at the 7 billion population around the world, women are more than men. You can Google it and then you will find it. So, and you can see the room here, it's full.
Yeah. I want to share a little of my story, because I think I am very fortunate to join my existing company. The point that when I got the interview, and I basically speak out, because as a mother of a toddler, I do realize that I need to have a balance of my life. I'm very committed and very career-minded woman. But it's funny though, when I first met with my 2 directors at the interview point, I basically told them how devoted mom I am, and what age of my son is, and how much time I want to spend with him. And I even said to them, I want to leave at the office at 5 o'clock every day. Having said that, it doesn't mean that I work from 7 to 5, but I did go to the office at the 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning. If there is a deadline for the client, I committed to my work. Is how you're actually balancing your life. I choose to live very close to my office, just to save the travel journey, like every day 2 hours in the daily life. So this is how something that you can basically change and drive yourself and project manage your life, your private life, as well as your career. So do speak up, yeah.
Just Fiona, on that point, I mean, I quit working after I had my daughter because I worked for an organization that wasn't supportive and followed the labor law. 45 days, you're expected to go back to the office. And I wasn't physically or emotionally ready to do that, so I actually took a career break. When I came looking for work, part-time work in this part of the world is very rare, and I think that is something that also needs to be introduced. Flexible working, agile working, part-time working, because there are so many women who can't commit to full-time work that have so many skills and have such great experience. And I'm very blessed at RICS that I still work on a part-time basis, 30 hours a week. I am available after hours. I'm happy to sign in on the weekends if required, but it's having that flexibility. And I do agree that procedures aren't always great and policies sometimes do hinder the process, but it is a starting point, especially when legislation here is evolving. So we have a 16-week maternity policy, which is very generous for this part of the world, and we do have 10 days of paternity.
Can I add something from a business owner, which is something very important? If we go back to Europe or from wherever we come, you see that part-time jobs are available and it will not cost you much as a business owner. Where here, if I'm gonna bring somebody on a part-time, I need to have a residency visa, I need to make sure that I will pay the insurance, I will need to make sure that everything is covered and legal, or the Ministry of Labor, they're gonna come after me. So there's a little bit of cost involved there, and you have to understand our position also. We would like to have part-time, we would like to have people coming at 8 o'clock and leaving at 2 o'clock. But we live in an environment for the last 18 years, especially in the GCC, where everything has been rushed. On work level, you don't have time, even the 10 hours that we're working is not enough. We try in our business to push people not to stay overtime. We eliminated something called overnights, and you need to manage your time, as you mentioned. But here I'm talking about everybody, I'm not talking about women only. So there's a cost implication, there's a procedure in the country, there's a lot of things that it's affecting us as a business owner and stopping us of giving you what you're looking for. And you really have to understand it. It's a cost. That's why you see all the big companies, they have offices outside, in Egypt, in India, in Bangalore, in Philippines, to reduce the cost. So having somebody working part-time, they will not be able to, you will not be able to give them enough tasks that they will work around it, because they will, nobody is willing to listen to me. So this is something is really, really important from a business owner.
I can say, I am not a business owner, but even when we start to look at policy, and sometimes process, as a quality manager, process gets in the way of things, believe me. Just to add to that, sometimes we are brave enough to stand up and speak and say, this is what we need, or, the policy is not working for us, can we have a look at it? Sometimes people are not that brave to take that action, and I think sometimes having a policy or a process allows the person who's not so brave to say, actually that applies to me also, just to have that baseline in place, or something to say, this is available to everybody, not just Fiona, not just Yasmina. We can all, use the flexible working policy, and it's a baseline for people to follow. And line managers need to be ambassadors of those policies and understand them.
There needs to be that
and
more,
really drive the behaviours.
Yeah, the human element behind policies and processes. Just because they're there and they're written down doesn't mean they can't be changed, doesn't mean they can't be discussed. And things aren't set in stone. If things don't work, like you said, you need to discuss it and speak out, and there's no reason why those things can't change.
Yeah, I do believe that top-down management, leader thinking is very important. So we really need to drive the leadership empathy to really be aware of what working women need nowadays, and also the balance of working life and the families and things like that. But I do believe that the culture change is very important as well, because I think there are many issues that, like a society. Some of the society values, and they're still thinking that like family caregiving or household choir is still belong to the women. So I think we do need to fight for that, and I'm sure that modern society, like our husband, they do share our house choir and things, but I think it really works on many aspects, and many support that's surrounding us. But from top down, the leaders thinking, the driving the change, and also middle management, that making the change and do the temperature surveys and understand what the employee are facing in terms of challenges and things like that. We all have to work together. Yeah.
I just want to talk about an article that I read yesterday from a guy called Asif Sadiq, who is the head of diversity and inclusion and belonging for The Telegraph. He's got quite a lot of interesting articles, if you want to have a look at them on his LinkedIn page. But he talked about diversity and inclusion being part of your design and service and not a standalone policy. And I found what he was saying quite interesting. He's got a lot of articles. He talked specifically about a chain of gyms that had to reconfigure the programme that issued gym passes, because automatically it was assuming that the doctor was a male and it was allowing them access to the male changing rooms. And I just found it really interesting. And again, just thinking about the industry that we're all connected with, I'm going to give you a question, Joe, about how, not just leading, but how do we ensure that we have got a diverse design team to enable the best result for our clients, whether that's a design or a service? How is JT and Partners kind of embracing that?
It's just, again, it's just, for me, like, I believe the subject is going a little bit in circles sometimes. It's the second summit I attend for the women in construction, and I'll be a speaker, and I feel that it's a frustration where we're going in circles about the subject, and as if there is nothing happening. You just need to feel that you do belong to that business, and then there's a lot of things that will make you feel belonging. I believe that you mentioned before that your management doesn't have female at that level, so there is all more about male and stuff like that. So in my opinion, that needs a revolution. If you're not happy in your business, you just need to make a move. And this is where we need two people to step up, as you mentioned, people to step up and then say, I'm not happy about it, I deserve to have the opportunity, and I want to move in my career. So this is what we're allowing it in our business. Is just, maybe because we're a 70 people business, is we're not 3,000, it's open discussion. Everybody is like, there's a staff from JT Partners around the table in here, they can tell you, it's like everybody has the potential and the possibility to be a decision maker. And this is something very important. You don't want to feel that the hierarchy that is pushing you down and down and down and down. And this goes back to the recruitment strategy. When you want to recruit new people based on an available position, first you need to see, can I recruit internally? And this is something very important. I was regional director for Atkins for 13 years, so we tried it a lot. And you see people, they've been in that company for 10 years, and suddenly at a stage, they will bring somebody and then they will put it on top of you, and then you feel that when I'm gonna get the opportunity to grow in my business. And this is the whole story. So by motivating your people and say that internal recruitment is something very important, you have the right to step up for any available position. It is something very important, and this is where you start feeling that the staff, male or female, they start feel this feel of belonging. And this is something very important.
Nesreen, just thinking about that recruitment process in your own organisation, is there anything you can share with us, maybe about Pinson Masons, anything that you're doing or your peers are doing, your colleagues, that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier that particularly in law, at the early stages, there's plenty of females. It's more than 50%. The issue is actually more later, when females stop to go and have children, and the difficulty in then coming back to a job that is well beyond 9 to 5. And I think what I've seen happen more and more so now is firms actually trying to have conversations with females before they go on maternity leave and saying, we want you to come back. We don't want you to stop for years and years and years and have nowhere to go. We want you to progress in our business. So what can we do from this point on to help you during your maternity leave and then in the process to come back again? And the more and more that happens, because realistically that's where we lose females in a lot of businesses. If those conversations are happening, females are much more likely to, well, first of all, recognize that the business wants them, it needs them, and they're going to help them. And the things to do in that interim period is, you know, just one-off office days to keep in touch with the staff. Invite them to lunches and dinners. It doesn't have to be you need to do XYZ work while you're on maternity leave. It's keeping in touch, keeping up to date with clients. The more that we do things like that, the less females are going to drop at that middle level, and the more chance there is of them progressing to leadership as well.
Just thinking about, you know, in terms of sort of influencing across the industry, is there any discussions happening with clients, contractors? You know, are we doing enough to influence clients and contractors to say this is the best person for the job? We'd really like to put this person in place. We go back to the recruitment, but our clients are asking for a certain skill set, a certain, kind of qualification, and we're putting the best person forward, and they say, no, we might prefer a male within our organisation. Are we doing enough to influence our clients and contractors and the people that we work with to really say, this is the best person for the job?
It's always about taking people and educating your clients. So it happened with me when I started JT & Partners, and because I'm the owner of the business, the clients, they feel they own me. So any project, where is Joe? But at the end, you reach a level where you can't be on all the projects. So the only way is that you take your director with you, and then you attend a couple of meetings, and then you give them the space, you pull back and let them talk, get this confidence, let them build this relationship with the client, and then you will feel it immediately after 3-4 meetings. You will skip one meeting and then things will go smooth. And then the client, he will feel comfortable. It's either a male, a female, or whoever. But there's simple ways of taking things by hand, educating your client. And it will be good also for contractors to have, I believe the afternoon session is going to talk about site, you know what I mean? It will be good to see more females on site, which is a little bit, I believe, it's a bit difficult, harsh environment in here. But yes, there is ways of doing it in a very simple, clever approach.
It comes down to management sort of standing their ground, you know, if supporting you and backing you. So if you go to a meeting and the client, you know, makes a phone call to management and says, oh, actually, I think I would prefer this person, it's then saying, well, this person is the most qualified person for the job, and backing that employee to make them feel confident. Because if you then get replaced, imagine what that does for your confidence. It would just crush you. Mm-hmm. And that, moving forward, then has a huge impact, and you have to rebuild. So I think as long as your management structure really support you, and the client or the contractor would soon realise that, you know, would soon come around to realising that you are the right person for the job, and they would hopefully feel stupid for asking to change in the first place. Yeah.
And I think all of that leads to the bigger issue of representation, which Laura touched on, is that we need to see strong female leaders. We need to see and celebrate those women. RICS has had 2 female presidents in 150 years, which isn't great, to be honest. But in 2014, we had our first female president. In 2016, a second female president. And I think it's seeing people like Laura and other individuals who are at that level speak, make people realize that, you know, it's not that odd to have a female CEO, and hopefully in a few years' time we won't even be sitting and discussing it, as Joe says.
Mm-hmm. There is one experience that happened in our office, and I believe one of our project director, Marianne, she's here around, and she's been with us for 4 years, and she joined us with no GCC experience. So I started pushing Marianne towards the front and meeting clients and until she reached a level where she came to me and she said, Joe, I cannot do it. And I told her, yes, you can. and you need to give her this kind of confidence and trust. You will push her. And yes, she went through tough times. We both went through tough times, but you need to give that opportunity. If you don't give them the opportunity to your staff, you will never understand if they are able or not able. You cannot just look at them and say, yes, you are. You need to give them the opportunity to move forward. Let them fail, and then you can understand the weaknesses and then work on them instead of always highlighting the strengths. This is the whole story about it. And Marianne, thank you. She's here somewhere.
So just moving towards kind of how we are building better workplace cultures, and we're all doing various things across the industry. What kind of level do we feel that we're at? Have we got a lot more to do? Do you feel you're in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? We're trying to, how mature is the industry in your, what's your perception?
I think it's important to realise, a lot of these conferences, and I was at the Big Five event last year, do focus on the negatives. But I think I like to be an optimist. I think we do have to focus on some of the positives that it is being spoken about. We do have these conferences. There are things changing. And it's not going to happen overnight. It is going to be a long process. But I think we should all take some inspiration that, I'm sure a lot of you here now will feel empowered, will go back to your office, hopefully, and start asking for what you want and what you deserve. It's all about valuing your worth and knowing your worth within your company to make sure that the management know that and realise that, and just keep that positive mindset that things will continue to change. And I think we should all start being a little bit more positive.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of my career, I did found that there are some obstacles because of my gentle in my career. But I think over the years, it's like 15 years after in the region, I think things are changing anyway. I think, first of all, a lot of companies have the divert D&I strategy in place, have the policies which help out the women to be more easier to, driving their career and advancing their career. But also that when I'm facing the client, although I think the norm is still probably exists, like there's still the only women in the project meetings and stuff like that, but the client are more welcoming the women take in charge and the driving the front line, the project roles. I think that's obviously a changing, scene that to me, yeah.
Yeah, I believe that, unfortunately, I don't feel myself that there is an issue. And the first issue by having this summit called Women in Construction Summit. And this has to change. I believe that the room is full of talented, very clever women, honestly, to be honest.
You can give us a new name.
Yeah. You have to give it a new name. So, yeah, for me, it's like, as I said before, it's personal. You need to step up. It's a revolution. You're not happy, move ahead. Unfortunately, the market is not good at the moment. And we all know that the procedures in this part of the world of you living in UAE, you need to live based on a residency visa, and so a lot of people, they will get stopped. They stop themselves of taking decision and say, I'm gonna move ahead in my career. I'm not happy because of that issue. So they say, we don't want to be without a job. So it's very simple. I believe things are far beyond. I don't believe there is an issue. There is a character and a personality and the will. This is how I look at it.
I wish there was more men like you, Joe.
I'm special.
Yes. I mean, I think the reality is that there are a lot of men who think the way Joe did. They don't see what the issue is because they genuinely see us as equal. Unfortunately, there's also a significant number that don't think about it because they just don't think about it. It doesn't come into their head. And I think that's the people that we really need to, and I think that's why we do need these kinds of conferences, because you need to raise the awareness of the issue first so that you can tackle it.
But
and
we need to push them to come.
Of course, and what I was going to say is that involves us as well. So as women, we have to be ready and willing to say, I am just as good as that man at doing this job, and I want that job. So it takes both. It's not just the men need to change their attitude. Women need to be better at putting themselves forward. And a little story. I mean, I was really lucky actually in my career in that I've never really. I went to a law firm and trained where there was just as many female construction lawyers as there was men. So I didn't feel like I was going into a minority. Moving on from there, you started to see it more and more. And at one stage, because I didn't push myself for something, I didn't get the progression, and 2 males did, and we were at the same level. They asked for it, I didn't.
Yeah.
So I moved firms to the role I should have had, and then as soon as I got to the new firm, I was like, by the way, I want to make partner, and I want it to happen soon. I'm not getting in a queue. And I was really quite blunt about it, and I remember saying that and coming away thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to get this job. But it worked, and fast forward a couple of years, and it's happened. So I think women really, really do need to make the effort, and it's okay, it's fine, that's expected. You, of course, are going to be wanting to progress your career. Why wouldn't you?
It comes back to the self-promotion
Absolutely.
topic, really believing in yourself. I think that's that's definitely a great example.
Don't wait for the promotion. You
Don't
create
wait
it.
for
You
it.
need to create
Go
it.
get it. Yeah. And encouraging each other, male and female, to say, do you know what, there's so many colleagues where males, in particular actually males, that I've spoken to along my career in Atkins and said, you should apply for that job. And they've actually said, oh, it's like 2 grades. And they've applied, and they've thanked me for encouraging the males to apply for the job. So it's I agree.
I think there is a lot to do yet, but it's all about encouraging each other and helping each other and supporting each other. And I get this feeling in my organization. We do that very much.
It's that belonging, like in your organisation, belonging, where you're
Yes,
believing and you're belonging, at work, and you feel that it's diverse and inclusive.
And not to feel threatened by other women, because I think that's something that happens quite a lot. When you see a successful woman and you're working alongside that woman, support each other. Don't think
Women
of yourself as
promoting
competitive.
women,
Yes.
men promoting men, and promoting each other.
Yeah.
And
It's not
saying you need to tell
competitive.
people about that.
Yes.
Tell somebody you did
Yeah.
well, whether it's male or female. Anything to add, Yasmina, on the
Yes,
self-promotion?
just more on a policy side. We have woven unconscious bias training into our recruitment process, into performance reviews, and having those, as a backdrop, allow people to be confident, be bold, and take the initiative to ask for what they want. So I think unconscious bias training for all staff, we want to introduce that to our membership panels as well, because we do see a problem personally. Out of 113,000 qualified members worldwide, which is a small percentage of the built environment sector, only 14% are women. Here in the Middle East, out of 4,500 members around the region, less than 600 are women. So these are matrices that are important and that we monitor and we encourage. And, as Laura said, you have to start young. You have to go to secondary schools and encourage women to study STEM, to study law, to study medicine. And I think that representation, again, is part of that.
And I think that's a nice message to leave on, to promote each other, male and female, whatever the build-up of that person is. It's to encourage each other and self-promote each other, to help us and enable us to drive our careers and the organisation forward. So thank you everybody. It was a really interesting discussion. I hope that everybody got some nice messages and some actions from that.